What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Yesterday I released an Elden Ring video discussing the stats of the different classes in the game and what each one of those stats are responsible for. And today, as promised, we're going to be looking at the 10 different classes that are available at launch in the game. We're going to look at the stat levels they start on, as well as any sorceries or incantations that they start with, and discussing which builds these classes would be suitable for if you still haven't decided which one of the 10 to play. And then last but surely not least, I'll also be mentioning the class that I'll be starting with. But without any further ado, let's jump right down here. And also in no particular order, let's basically go through them from start to finish. So the first two we'll look at is of course the Wretch and the Prophet. Now the Wretch is an interesting one because it's the only class out of the 10 that starts at level 1. So you start at level 1 and you have essentially 10 points in each one of the 8 stats that are available. This means that most likely the Wretch is the most, let's say, empty slate or you know, open class to play. But the point also being that because you don't have any of these stats starting higher, it also means that it doesn't favor anything specifically. You also only start with a club with this class, so I don't think that the idea that some people have that this is the best class to pick if you don't know what to play is necessarily true. It is definitely better to pick one of the other 9 classes that are flavored more towards a certain playstyle, and I think that the Wretch is probably something that's, you know, for a later stage when you understand the game a little bit better. But it certainly is interesting to have a character that is essentially like a blank slate and you can essentially, you know, plan it from scratch. The second class we'll be looking at is the Prophet. Now the Prophet specifically has 2 incantations that it starts with: O Flame, which is a damage dealing one, and then Heal, which obviously heals. And by default, you can see that the Prophet starts with a fairly high faith stat. This means that this class is definitely favored towards anybody that wants to build a faith caster class, or somebody that wants to hybrid, you know, build something that includes faith or incantations rather. Then number 3 and 4 we'll look at is the Confessor and the Samurai. So specifically looking at the Confessor starts at level 10. It is the character class out of the 10 that starts at the highest level, which is level 10. Other than that, its stats aren't heavily flavored in any specific direction. However, it does have a fairly high faith stat right off the bat at 14, and then also 2 incantations: Assassin Approach as well as Urgent Heal. So these are the 2 classes that you could potentially look at if you want to start building towards faith, whereas the previous class that we just discussed is more for just faith casting. Confessor might be a good option if you're looking to hybridize it in some way. The next one is the Samurai. Samurai starts at level 9 but has a fairly high endurance bar as well, just straight off the blocks. So this means that you have a pretty decent stamina bar, as well as being able to equip, you know, fairly high armor right from the beginning. And generally this would be a good class to pick if you want to hybrid into a physical class, something that uses a lot of weapons. This is one of those short little clips where I remind you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with a buddy, because it really does mean a lot to the channel. But I don't have to do that because you've already done those things. So all I'm gonna do is say have a fucking great day. Next we have the Bandit. The Bandit starts at level 5 and has a really high arcane stat, so 14. Now there's not a lot known about arcane at the moment right now. The suspicion is that while we have sorceries and incantations in the game, which are essentially the damage dealing and the buffing side of the magic in broad terms, it is understood that arcane is a stat that will affect some spells in the game. And possibly, I didn't play the closed network test, and I've also not played the game in any capacity. I've just gleaned this information from obviously scrubbing the internet and all of the footage that we've seen. So my suspicion is that arcane as a stat could also affect some of the summons, for instance, that you get in the game. But that is of course likely to, you know, be cleared up the minute we can actually play the game. But nonetheless, arcane does seem to be a thing though, because we have the Bandit with an extremely high starting arcane stat. Next we have the Astrologer. The Astrologer starts with very high mind and very high intelligence, and with 2 sorceries, Glintstone Pebble and Glintstone Arc. This means that of course then the Astrologer is a natural fit for a caster class, more specifically a class that is looking to use like the intelligence stat, in other words sorceries. Then we have the warrior starts at level 8 and has a fairly high dexterity stat right off the bat, 16. Dexterity of course determines your damage with ranged weapons as well as your casting speed actually, but what dexterity also covers is your damage with fast weapons. So the warrior actually starts with 2 scimitars, dual wielding those scimitars. So if you are looking to play a physical class or perhaps something that hybridizes between physical and dexterity, specializing in dual wielding, then this is definitely the class for you. Next we have the prisoner. The prisoner is also a sorcery based class which doesn't really feature any specifically high stats in any category. However, we do have a 14 in intelligence and a 14 in dexterity, which certainly positions the prisoner to kind of like hybridize sorcery into something that uses spells but also uses a bow for range damage. Now you also do start with a sorcery magic glint blade, and that certainly can help you out as well. Then I think last but not least we have the Vagabond and the Hero. So the Vagabond itself is level 9 when it starts and has a stat of 15 in vigor. Vigor is of course your health bar, so that just means that most likely the Vagabond is the most beginner friendly class out of the bunch, just due to the fact that you start with a bigger life bar, which means you can take more damage before you inevitably die and lose all of your souls. The Hero starts with at level 7 but starts with an incredibly high strength stat, so naturally flavored to anybody that is thinking of playing a pure physical build. The Hero also starts basically like with a battle axe and a leather shield, so it's the perfect sort of situation for you to start practicing and playing into a physical damage dealing sort of role. So what does all of this mean? Basically, if we extrapolate all of that information, we can create a little table like this, where if you don't know which one of the 10 classes to play yet, but you kind of know how you want to play the game, this might point you the right direction. So on the screen right now, you can see some different categories there. So let's say for argument's sake, you want to play a class that uses some sorceries, maybe not the most high powered ones, but you also want to be able to use some melee weapons, a long sword or something like that in the game to be able to defend yourself if enemies come up close. Then you could settle for something like a strength intelligence hybrid, and that then means that the Vagabond, the Samurai, the Prisoner and the Astrologer are probably good picks for you. Now I plan on playing the game a multiple amount of times and at least trying the different core pillars of builds. So definitely a strength based build, a dex based build and an int based build, and then obviously some hybrids as well. But for my first playthrough of the game, I'll definitely be going for a straight up sorcery casting machine, and so therefore for me the best fit is probably the Prisoner or the Astrologer. And I kind of, I think I'm gonna go with the Astrologer. It seems like the class that I want to give my first playthrough to. So that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments down below, based on this information, or maybe you already made up your mind before you saw this video, which class will you be playing at launch? Are you picking up the game, and are you like in any way possibly nearly as excited as I am for this? I honestly cannot wait. At the time of recording this video, it is Tuesday, which means 3 more days until it comes out, and I just can't wait. But more importantly, I want you to have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.